Alright, we're going to play a quick 9 holes today in Saratoga Springs, Utah at Talons Cove Golf Course. Playing with TaylorMade's new Stealth irons. They are TaylorMade's new 2022 Player Improvement irons. So I'm excited to get them out on the course and get my first impressions of how they play. So on the first hole, it was a little bit of a scramble to get going and it was pretty busy. So I didn't get recordings on my first 2 shots, but we're dealing with a par 5. This is my third shot, 140 yards out, a little bit uphill. Went with the pitching wedge, which is probably a little short of a club that I would pick for 140 yards. I'd probably do more of a 9 iron, a nice easy 9. But these are high lofted clubs, which are really interesting to get used to. I'm not too worried about yardages on this round, more so about just getting the feel. Hole number 2, we have a par 4, not super long, but it is pretty sharp dog leg, so I'm just aiming to the open part of the fairway, just over this first fairway bunker, trying to get it about 220, so picking a 4 iron. And what I've noticed about these clubs is they feel a little bit top heavy, so I keep hitting behind the ball on my first couple shots. Took a little bit of getting used to, so here it was a bit of a shank. Just hit it super fat and didn't even get it to the fairway. I don't think that's a deal breaker about these clubs. I think that's just a personal preference thing, since I'm coming from some lighter weight Mizuno blades that I've been playing with for the last year, so it just took a couple holes to get used to. But as you can see, there's a few shots that weren't great, and this next one is pretty much the same thing, where I took a lot of ground behind the ball and didn't get much distance out of it. This next shot is just a 60-degree, pretty short par 4. I did want to point out I'm not showing every shot because this video is supposed to focus on the irons. So I'm going to show all my iron shots, but not every putt or every tee shot for that matter, just to give you an initial impression of how these clubs feel out on the course. Was able to get up and down for par here, and the tripod fell over because it was a pretty windy day, which is why I chose a pitching wedge on this par 3 for hole 4. It's 149 yards. Normally I pick a pitching wedge for 130 to around 135, but with the wind at my back I thought it would be good, plus they are higher lofted clubs, so I wanted to club down a little bit for that. I ended up pushing out to the right a little bit. I also think I'm swinging a little fast. These shafts are a little more flexible than the ones I normally play, so I needed to slow down the swing. I was kind of pushing everything out to the right. This tee shot ended up going out of bounds barely, so I had to take a drop, and I'm hitting my third from about 130 yards out. So I took the pitching wedge again, figured it was in a little bit of some deeper rough where I dropped, so I figured I might take up a little more grass with it and not get the full distance. But I ended up taking way more grass than I thought, ended up being a little bit shorter, and got another bogey on this hole, so I didn't get up and down from there. I did want to talk about how these clubs look at approach behind the ball. Again, being that I'm coming from blades, they do seem a little bit bigger than normal. That top line is a little bit thick, but at the same time it definitely helps give you some confidence that you're not gonna miss the sweet spot. I need redemption with some of the longer irons here, so I'm taking a 6 iron, 202 on this par 3, wind at my back just a little bit. I finally hit a good shot. It was a red flag, but it ended up being on the back of the green. 3 putt for bogey on this hole, unfortunately, but with these irons I will say the face is a little bit harder. The sweet spot is pretty wide, and so it is forgiving in that sense, but it does feel pretty hard coming off the face. This next hole is par 5, second shot. My tee shot ended up just in the rough barely. Was able to get another good shot with my 4 iron to just move the ball up the fairway. Set me up pretty well for an approach shot here. I am taking my pitching wedge again from 133. Same as the last couple shots, I was finally able to start hitting the sweet spot on these clubs, and when you do that, they are very forgiving. They don't spin as much. The spin was definitely exaggerated with the wind, so it was hard to get a great read on that, but as far as a forgiving iron goes, they don't spin out a ton. So this next shot is an example of some user error. I was misclubbed. I tried to force a pitching wedge 157 yards when I should have clubbed up. So I hit a decent shot, hit it on the sweet spot, but the wind really exaggerated it, so it was slicing pretty good to the point where when it landed, it was a little bit short and then kicked to the right hard into the bunker. I did get up and down there to save par, so I'm sticking at 5 over for the round. We're on the last hole, par 5. We are 5 over par for the day. With these TaylorMade Stealth irons, I really like them. What will make a big difference is if you get your shafts fitted to match your game. I think these were a little too flexible for me, which isn't a big deal. It's just something that I wasn't used to, and so I had to make some adjustments, being that I hadn't really hit them a ton before playing here today. Being a par 5, I wanted to just work the ball up the fairway again. I knew I wasn't going to get it there and wanted another shot at this 4-iron. I did the classic error that I have been all day and hit behind the ball again. I wasn't too worried about it being a par 5, of course, because it still rolled enough up to give me a chance at the green in regulation. 162 yards out for my last approach shot. Took an 8-iron, which I thought was going to be the right club. That is something I have noticed with the little time I have spent with these irons. Player improvement irons, I found this is the case with a lot of them, but they can be a little inconsistent with distances. Like I said, I don't know these distances super well, but there are times where I've rocketed a shot off the sweet spot and it goes 10, 15 yards further than expected, and sometimes it goes 5, 10 yards shorter than expected. A lot of it is probably user error, but I have found that some other irons can be a little more consistent. This was the same case. This 8-iron went a little longer than expected and flew the green. I ended up in a bunker just beyond the green. Had a pretty good bunker shot, but still 2-putted, so I ended up with another bogey and a final score of 42 for these 9 holes. My final thoughts, though, for these irons is a lot of what I already said, right? The higher lofts, you just got to adjust for that and re-gap your distances with your irons before you go play. Today, being super windy, was not a great reference for that. I did get a good feel of was how the ball comes off the club, though. And like I mentioned before, it's a little more of a hard feel. It's a little harsh coming off. But the sweet spot is pretty big, and so it is forgiving if you don't hit it right on the money. Again, it's just a little bit of a harder feel. If you like that, then great. And the last is just that the head is a little bit bigger as you get with a lot of player improvement irons. So because of that, it is a little more weighted. To me personally, I felt in the backswing and on your downswing, you could kind of feel the weight of that head being a little top heavier. Overall, I really like playing with these irons. I'm excited to play with different TaylorMade irons that they have in their lineup to see how they compare to these Stealth irons. And I'm excited to play with different player improvement irons from other brands as well, just to see how they match up. If you're looking to buy new irons and like these type of reviews to see how different models and brands actually play out on a course, then you can subscribe because I'll be posting more videos of as many different irons as possible.